Hi, it's Nicole from A Day of Small Things. If we haven't met before, I'm doing a master's degree in English literature in Durham University in the UK. I've been doing a lot of uni vlogs, but today I'll be talking about one of the texts that I studied for my course, Venus and Adonis by Shakespeare. Venus and Adonis is an erotic narrative poem published in 1593, very early in Shakespeare's career, and it was actually the first of his works to appear in print. He wrote it at a time when London's theatres were closed because of the plague, so he turned to poetry instead of playwriting, most likely as a way to earn an income. The poem is dedicated to Shakespeare's patron, Henry Wriothesley, I think that's how you say it, Earl of Southampton, who is often suggested as one of the possible candidates for the fair youth figure in the sonnets. It quickly became extremely popular, going through multiple editions during Shakespeare's lifetime and earning a reputation as his best-selling work of the era. The poem was far more popular than his plays in the 1590s. People quoted Venus and Adonis widely, and it outsold early editions of his plays by a long way. Many readers, especially younger ones, were drawn to its wit, sensuality, and playful tone. Francis Mears in 1598 said, "The sweet, wittier soul of Ovid lives in mellifluous and honey-toned Shakespeare." Witness his Venus and Adonis. But there were complaints by moralists too. A guy called Brathwaite wrote this in 1630. I'll read it first and paraphrase it in normal English. He wrote this concerning the wanton works of his time. "But alas, to what height of licentious liberty are these corrupter times grown, when that sex, meaning women, where modesty should claim a native prerogative, gives way to foments of exposed looseness, by not only attending to the wanton discourse of immodest lovers, but carrying about them, even in their naked bosoms, where chastest desires should only lodge. The amorous toys of Venus and Adonis, which poem with others of like nature, they hear with such attention, peruse with such devotion, and retain with such delectation, as no subject can equally relish their unseasoned palate, like those lighter discourses." So to paraphrase, but sadly, to what extreme levels of unchecked immorality have these morally corrupted times risen, when that sex for whom modesty ought to be a natural and unquestionable right, now gives itself over to the provocations of openly displayed sexual looseness, by not only listening to the seductive talk of shameless lovers, but even carrying wisdom pressed close to their bare breasts, where only pure desires ought to reside. Erotic love stories, such as Venus and Adonis. Notice how Venus and Adonis became a cultural shorthand for erotic literature. This poem is quite special because it begins with a dedication in which we can hear Shakespeare's personal voice. We have his plays and poems, but these are fictional. The author is often hidden. Shakespeare is famous for not giving his personal opinions through the characters in his plays. We also don't see his personal emotions or motivations because we have very few texts in which he speaks in the first person. So this is special because the dedication to Venus and Adonis is one of those rare occasions in which Shakespeare explicitly says "I." Right Honourable, I know not how I shall offend in dedicating my unpolished lines to your lordship, nor how the world will censure me for choosing so strong a prop to support so weak a burden. Only, if your honour seem but pleased, I count myself highly praised, and vow to take advantage of all idle hours, till I have honoured you with some graver labour. But if the first heir of my invention prove deformed, I shall be sorry you had so noble a godfather, and never after years so barren a land, for fear it yield me still so bad a harvest. I leave it to your honourable survey, and your honour to your heart's content, which I wish may always answer your own wish and the world's hopeful expectation. Your honours, in all duty, William Shakespeare. I spent many hours researching this poem in order to write an essay. I copied the entire poem out by hand, made notes on my observations and thoughts, and tagged repeated themes and motifs. The colourful lines down the middle of the 2 pages mark the speakers. Pink for Venus, blue for Adonis, and green for the narrator. I had a wonderful time with Shakespeare, as usual. One technique I've learned for studying Shakespeare is to read his source materials. As I said earlier, Shakespeare is famous for not really giving away his personal opinions through the characters in his plays. I think it's Jonathan Bate, one of my favorite Shakespeare scholars, who says that while it's almost impossible to work out what Shakespeare thought about things just by reading the plays, you can start to see clues when you compare them with the original sources. Looking at what Shakespeare keeps the same and what he chooses to change makes you wonder what motivated those decisions. Why does he adapt some elements but leave others untouched? Venus and Adonis retells a myth from Ovid's Metamorphoses. The goddess of love, Venus, becomes infatuated with the beautiful Adonis, who is far more interested in hunting with his companions than in any kind of romantic relationship. Much of the poem focuses on Venus' passionate, often overwhelming attempts to win Adonis' affection, and on Adonis' determined refusal. The poem begins like a romantic comedy, but it gradually grows more serious as it progresses, and the ending feels quite unexpected, unless you are already familiar with Metamorphoses. In Ovid's version of the story, Adonis is a willing lover, but Shakespeare reshapes him into a shy, resistant, quoting Venus, flint-hearted youth. As a result, Shakespeare's Venus is nothing like Ovid's Venus. She is passionate, eloquent, overwhelming, theatrical, and ridiculous. She's less dignified and more sensual and more desperately in love than her Ovidian counterpart. I'll read you a few stanzas from the poem and show you what she's like. Just to set the scene, the first half of the poem is basically a long conversation, although Venus does most of the talking or wooing. At the beginning of the poem, she swoops down from a morning sky, plucks Adonis from his horse, pushes him down on the ground, and basically pins him there for the rest of the day. So, what is Shakespeare's Venus like? First of all, as the chief erotic poem of the day, the poem is sexy, Venus is seductive. I'll be a park, and thou shalt be my dear. Feed where thou wilt, on mountain or in dale. Graze on my lips, and if those hills be dry, stray lower, where the pleasant fountains lie. I don't think I need to explain that. It somehow translates across 400 years' time with no difficulty at all. Secondly, she and the pair of them does ridiculous and comical things. This is when Adonis gives her an angry look instead of the kisses she keeps begging for. She responds by pretending to be dead. And at his look, she flatly falls down. The city boy, believing she is dead, claps her pale cheek till clapping makes it red, and all amazed break off his late intent, for sharply he did think to reprehend her, which cunning love did witly prevent. Fair for the wit that can so well defend her, for on the grass she lies as she were slain, till his breath breathes life in her again. He wrings her nose, he strikes her on the cheeks, he bends her fingers, holds her pulses hard, he chafes her lips 1,000 ways he seeks to mend the hurt that his unkindness marred. He kisses her, and she, by her good will never rise, so he will kiss her still. This doesn't sound like a goddess at all. She's a woman in love. Her affection is not returned, however much she tries. Adonis just doesn't love her back, so she steals kisses. I love the detail that he holds her pulses. It's really human. Thirdly, she's forceful in physical desire. She's overwhelmingly passionate and physically bold. Adonis, really desperate to go home by this point, because it's already midnight and Venus has kept him captive all day, eventually promises her a kiss so that she will stop talking and let him go. Now let me say goodnight, and so say you. If you will say so, you shall have a kiss. Good night, quoth she, and ere he says adieu, the honey fee of parting tendered is. Her arms do lend his neck a sweet embrace, incorporate then they seem, face grows to face, till breathless he disjoined and backward drew the heavenly moisture, that sweet coral mouth, whose precious taste her thirsty lips well knew, whereon they surfeit, yet complain on drought. He with her plenty pressed, she faint with dearth, their lips together glued, fall to the earth. Now quick desire hath caught the yielding prey, and glutton-like she feeds, yet never filleth. Her lips are conquerors, his lips obey, paying what ransom the insulter willeth, whose vulture thought does pitch the price so high that she will draw his lips' rich treasure dry. And having felt the sweetness of the spoil, with blindfold fury she begins to forage. Her face doth reek and smoke, her blood doth boil, and careless lust stirs up a desperate courage, planting oblivion, beating reason back, forgetting shame's pure blush and honor's rack. Shakespeare's Venus is almost animalistic in her intensity. I love reading long passages out for you. Let it speak for itself. I hope you get a feel of Venus' wild, desperate passion. The second half of the poem becomes much darker, and we start to see a very different side of Venus. Fourthly, she is vulnerable, with her emotions swinging wildly between hope and fear, joy and grief. This is no longer just a case of unrequited love, it has become a matter of life and death. Adonis is determined to go hunting the next day, and when Venus hears the cry of the hounds, she knows they have cornered some dangerous beasts. She is beside herself with worry, terrified that Adonis might be killed. This dismal cry rings sadly in her ear, through which he enters to surprise her heart, who, overcome by doubt and bloodless fear, with cold pale weakness numbs each feeling part. Like soldiers, when their captain once does yield, they basely fly and dare not stay the field. Thus stands she in a trembling ecstasy, till cheering up her senses sore dismayed, she tells them 'tis a causeless fantasy and childish error that they are afraid. bids them leave quaking, bids them fear no more, and with that word she spied the hunted boar, whose frothy mouth be painted always red, like milk and blood be mingled both together. A second fear through all her sinew spread, which madly hurries her she knows not whither. This way she runs, and now she will no further, but back retires to rate the boar for murder. Even though Venus is a goddess, she feels intensely human. She longs, she gets jealous, she acts on impulse, and she experiences fear and grief. In many ways, she behaves less like a divine figure and more like a mortal. What is Shakespeare's purpose in making her like this? Instead of presenting Venus as a powerful and domineering goddess like in Ovid, the poem seems much more interested in showing how love creates weakness. Love even makes the goddess of love helpless, leaving her frustrated, anxious, and heartbroken. And maybe that's the point. Love feels more precious and more beautiful because it isn't just divine or idealized, but deeply human, messy, and painful too. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.